Hey there, some guy you've never heard of and don't actually give a shit about here. How's it going? So, I thought about for a while what kind of videos I wanted to make, and I went from thinking about talking about popular topics and drama, because I like listening to that stuff, to anime and games, because I like to waste my time on that stuff. But I finally decided to focus my first video on an anime game, Genshin Impact, because for the first time in a really long time, I'm actually really excited about something that's happening in the game. Now, before jumping right into this, I do want to say that nothing I'm about to talk about right now has been confirmed by Mihoyo, and there is a big crackdown right now on Genshin Impact leaks, so I wanted to give my opinion on those since a few content creators have already done so. Listen, I understand that because of leaks, Mihoyo has started canceling beta testing, and it's not the best situation. There is a lot of trust being lost between fans and the company, but leaks, like most things, aren't just black and white. Leaks make for lazy content and spoil some people who would prefer to be surprised by the game and new things that are officially announced or released. These are also unfinished products and can lead to people having misconceptions about when new things will be released to the public and how certain characters might operate. However, I think that leaks can have good outcomes as well that are beneficial to the fans. For starters, it gives people new goals and new reasons to keep playing the game. These past few weeks have been pretty fucking dry on official announcements to keep playing for any purpose besides just keeping up the grind to be blindly prepared for what comes next. Maybe some people are excited for Rosaria, but that isn't everyone. The fact that we're having two rerun banners back to back is pretty boring, and the new event is pretty fun. But without any real kind of endgame, it's still pretty lacking, and dry spells like this could lose people's attention. However, the prospect of two new characters being added, knowing what it takes to ascend them, and having something new to grind for is actually pretty enjoyable, even if they aren't added right away. If these characters weren't given sufficient time for the public to get ready for them, then we would likely only have Mihoyo's official announcement, which would likely come out only days before the new update. While whales would be able to use all of their daily resin refreshes and finish building their characters possibly within a couple days with only a few days' notice, you can't ignore the fact that most players in the game in general wouldn't be able to do that with such short notice. The leak has given players ample time to get ready and start saving and working towards the new characters. Now, I think it's also important to acknowledge the lack of interest people have seemed to have when leaks were happening prior to 1.5's leaks. Ganyu, Zhao, and Hu Tao were all known about well in advance, and people were pumped the fuck up about their eventual releases. Now, you could say that Zhao and Ganyu were already in the main story, so it makes sense that they would be added eventually, and you would be right about that. Nevertheless, Hu Tao was known about well before any mention of her in-game, and it seemed that no one had any actual issue with her leaks. Hell, even Ayaka has been known about for way longer and still isn't out yet, and people are still waiting on her and saving their primos for her. It just seems ridiculous to have such a lax attitude towards leaks for so long, and then just suddenly turn around and say that it harms the game and the community's perception of the game, when in all reality it just gets people prepared and hyped up for the most part. Now that that shit's done, let me talk about what I really wanted to talk about, which is Eula. She's a new character that's been leaked recently, and holy shit, I'm so excited for her release. The only character I've been as excited about in this game prior to this was Diluc before I even played Genshin Impact. She also has the niche style of being a mainly physical DPS character that uses the cryo element, which is one of the two required elements for superconduct. And that would have been unique if Rosaria wasn't being released in like a week. However, because of this, she has a diverse set of artifact builds and weapons that she can use, which is the main thing I wanted to make this video for. So let's start with her weapon. Now, the main question to ask is what will her best weapon be? And the answer to that is whatever fucking weapon is on the weapon banner at the time, let's be real. However, if you don't want to take the risk of becoming Tectone, you might want to go with a more budget option, which is really helpful as one of her best possible options is in fact a free-to-play weapon, the Snow-Tombed Star Silver. Now, the Star Silver is great because at max level it has the high base attack of 565 and a 34% physical damage as its substat. Not only that, but its effect increases the damage based on whether or not the enemy is affected by cryo, which is her element. Overall, this weapon will definitely be one of the better 4-star options for Eula, but if you, for some reason, haven't gotten the Star Silver, or if you ape-brained and foddered it off to some weapon for an inferior character, you could just swap it out for the budget Star Silver, the Skyrider Greatsword. Now, there are two other options to talk about, the Black Cliff Slasher and the Serpent Spine. These two weapons are obviously not free to play, but they are incredibly common to find, and they're also very generic and good in their own rights. The Black Cliff Slasher has a base attack of 510 and gives 55% critical damage, and the Serpent Spine has the exact same base attack of 510 and 27.6 crit rate. It also sucks, and you probably shouldn't bother with it because Eula is a cryo character, and if you can't get crit rate on your cryo character, that's your fault. So, it comes down to whether or not you want the Black Cliff Slasher or the Star Silver, and both are reasonable options. The Star Silver offers less damage and only boosts your physical damage, but it is a consistent boost. The Slasher, however, offers more overall damage, but obviously unless you have 100% crit rate, you won't be able to completely count on the crit damage. As I said, both options are completely viable, but you will have to build your Eula according to what weapon you gave her. So now we reach the artifact list part. I took some time out to find out what artifacts would best support these two items, and I decided on two completely different lists of artifacts for this. For the Black Cliff Slasher, you would want to run the Blizzard Strayer 4-piece set, as pairing those with Cryo Resonance alone will give you an immediate boost of 35% crit rate, starting you at a base of 40% crit rate and 143% crit damage without your artifact's main or substats. Because Eula will likely always lead with her elemental skill, it's incredibly likely that Cryo can easily be applied to targets thanks to her low cooldown elemental skill. Her Cryo privilege allows you to fight without worrying as much about being able to land crits or getting 10% crit rate on every artifact. There are downsides to this build, however. Obviously, you will need another Cryo character to pair with her to get resonance. Not only that, but elemental enemies such as slimes and the hypostasis cubes will cause some issues with your build, as you'll have a harder time applying cryo on them consistently, losing your constant big PP crit damage. This build is overall decent for mobbing, but the Black Cliff Slasher's secondary effect becomes basically useless in boss fights because there are no small enemies for you to defeat to get the extra attack, whereas the Star Silver's effect is more general and usable in most situations. Because of these issues, this build is somewhat inconsistent and not very reliable due to the multiple factors that can cause you to lose damage on a character who should have been able to unga bunga with the best of them. As for the Snow-Tombed Star Silver's build, I would pile onto it more physical damage, and it just so happens that as part of the leak, a new artifact set was revealed, Pale Flame. The 2-piece effect is a straight 25% physical damage boost, while the 4-piece set gives up to 3 stacks of attack 6% for 7 seconds per stack. You get these stacks by damaging an enemy with an elemental skill, and when you have 3 stacks, the 2-set bonus is doubled. Because of Eula's low skill cooldown, some people have said that this set is tailor-made for her, and I want to confirm that that is absolutely fucking stupid. 18% attack is hardly worth the effort, and if you wanted an extra 25% physical damage bonus, there's a way fucking easier way to get that bonus. Just use Bloodstained Chivalry 2-piece along with it. It's not that fucking hard. So, the Star Silver build uses the 2-piece sets of Pale Flame and Bloodstained Chivalry. The positives of this build are that by using a physical damage cup, the sword, and these two 2-piece sets, you get a nice 142.3 physical damage bonus. Along with that, this build isn't reliant on cryo resonance, allowing for a more varied team comp, giving you easier access to melt and superconduct to make up for your weak cryo attacks. And unlike the slasher build, elemental enemies really aren't a problem and can be seen as free elemental procs, as most of your damage is done through your burst and your auto attacks. Obviously the Pale Flame set is not necessarily confirmed and shouldn't be bet on, but if it doesn't exist you can use a 2-piece of Gladiator, Noblesse, or Blizzard Strayer in its place. Overall, it's pretty obvious that I lean more towards the Star Silver build due to its consistency and variety. However, the Slasher build is still very effective on many enemies and is a much more simple build for those who want to farm only a single domain or those who want to fully pre-farm as much as they can. Finally, it's important to talk about team comp, and as you may have guessed, the teams will be different as the two builds are played very differently. Now, the Slasher team is somewhat rigid as it requires a second cryo character to act as support. However, an obvious choice if you have her is Diona. She make shield, she make heal, and you get your crit bonus. It's hard to go wrong as she's one of the best support characters in the game. Because you're getting your healing and shielding from a single character, your team is wide open for options, and the next character to be added to it is Xingqiu. It may seem strange to use him as he's also a healer, but his ability to work in tandem with Eula's ice attacks can turn her base 40% crit rate into 60% by freezing enemies hit with his water swords. Lastly, you'll need a secondary DPS to deal with ice shields and slimes. Any pyro DPS will work wonderfully aside from Xiangling, as her burst and elemental skills could easily interrupt the application of your cryo, once again taking away your big PP. If Diona isn't available, or if you hate her design as much as I do, feel free to just swap her with Chongyun. He'll have great synergy with Xingqiu, but at that point why bother using Eula at all? Now, where Slasher is very strict with its build, Star Silver is way more open to many characters. A character we all have who is incredibly powerful as support is Xiangling. A fully built Xiangling support would make up for the Star Silver's incredibly lackluster cryo attacks, allowing you to get melt procs to make up for her lack of cryo support. Obviously, since she's a physical DPS character, you're going to want an Electro character to help her activate Superconduct. Beidou and Fish are both fine options for her. I believe Fish would be the better choice as she's easier to build for a simple support role, but Beidou's damage reduction from her burst can also be taken into consideration, and as a bonus, if you told me you wanted to use Kaching as your Electro support, I would probably spit in your mouth before you could even finish the sentence. Finally, you just need a simple supportive shield or healer character. Of course, a character like Chi-Chi or Diona would be fine as well, giving you cryo resonance, but I personally would just use Zhongli mainly because I have him. If you don't, feel free to use whatever. And that concludes the builds that I've knocked around in my head for a while. Her artifact main stats are very straightforward. Attack percent sand, physical damage cup or cryo if you decided to use Chongyun in your slasher build, and finally crit rate hat for Star Silver, and an interchangeable crit rate or crit damage hat for slasher. Very simple. Now you might be wondering why I didn't mention Bennett as a support option for either build, and the reason for that is simple. Bennett is really overpowered, and you should probably start learning to play without him instead of trying to force him into every build like I do with my Zhongli. Huh. Anyways, thanks for watching. I really appreciate it if anyone's actually watching this, and I hope that somebody got something out of this. Obviously, I could be wrong, but this is just what I've found from, you know, just looking at artifact sets and weapons, and obviously people could come up with something different from me. And I'm not saying that my ideas are final, but I just wanted to bring this up and talk about it for a little bit. So I hope that you enjoyed. Bye.